2 seconds. Okay, you're live.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Regeneration and Housing Scrutiny Board review. It says on my paperwork, but I don't believe it's called that anymore. Is it Regeneration? And
it is still called that.
Oh, apologies, I thought it had been changed.
It will change.
So have we got any apologies for the meeting? I've got them from Councillor Chambers. Are there any other apologies? No? Okay. Late items introduced by the chair, I haven't got any. Declarations of interest. Has anybody got any declarations of interest? No. Okay. So minutes meeting held on the 7th of March. Obviously, I wasn't there, so I can't tell you whether they are a true reflection, but shall we just note them and move on?
Yeah, note them. Okay.
Right, item 5, a minute extract from Executive Scrutiny Board. Anyone want to tell us about this?
Just at the last meeting of Exec Scrutiny, they suggested that you take on the assembly as a key decision, and it's referred to you to include in your work programme.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to include that. You, Matthew?
Absolutely. I think we mentioned it.
We did mention it previously. Absolutely correct.
Project of some more needs to be looked at by this committee.
So asset management overview, highways maintenance. I believe that's you, Dave.
It is, thanks, Chair. So just bear with me one sec while I'm sharing my screen. That's not okay, great, thank you. So this is a asset management overview on highway maintenance. Highway maintenance will last at scrutiny, or I think it was communities and place scrutiny back in November 21, reporting on asset management of highways and the progress on spending the additional 9 million that we got over a couple of years. So we'll go over the approach again for the benefit of new members to scrutiny. I say the fact that one was at communities and place scrutiny, and also include an update on decarbonisation, which is something we've started to look at in more detail since November 21. So a little background first. Historically in highway maintenance, and I'm going back to kind of up to around 2010 here, there was a tendency to use a worst first approach in terms of how we dealt with highway maintenance. We were doing little bits of preventative treatment, but not in a way that was as transparent as we are today, as planned and as well informed as it is today. But very quickly, a definition of asset management: systematic process of developing, operating, maintaining, upgrading and disposing of assets in the most cost-effective manner. And this is something we've been striving to do for a few years now. So originally we started to look at the asset management approach in around 2010, and then in 2016 the Department for Transport published a new code of practice around highway maintenance, with an expectation that all local authorities would have it implemented by October 2018. And Derby were one of the few authorities to achieve this target. But basically what we're looking to do is consider the right intervention, the right treatment at the right time and in the right place. Consider the whole life of the asset, and this will include a mix of planned and preventative treatments. So planned are full resurfacing, preventative treatments are things like surface dressing and slurry sealing. And ultimately the aim is to extend the life of the asset and get as long a life cycle as possible out of it. So the first part of this was to understand what we have and what condition it's in. A few years back, we started carrying out an annual engineers inspection for the whole network, and that included footways and carriageways, and that gave the baseline on where to start, fully understanding the asset. So as well as getting the condition data of what it's like, we're now better able to forecast deterioration rates because we're repeating that annual engineers inspection, and again that helps us to intervene at the optimum time. So the figures there, so this has provided us with figures on what our maintenance need is, and that 51.6 million for roads, that is to get all the roads to an acceptable condition, not a first class condition, an acceptable condition. And we've also managed to calculate that that gives us a 7.5 million annual depreciation. With footways, it's a 23.6 million maintenance need with 1.5 million annual depreciation. Our current funding for this year is just under 4.5 million. So
you've got less than 10% of what you need to spend.
Yes.
Less than 5 if you put it.
Yes, across the whole lot. Yeah.
7%. You've got 7% of the money that you actually need.
Yes. Yeah. So we're managing a deteriorating asset. We have been. I mean, I've been at DCC since 2002. We're constantly managing a deteriorating asset. So this asset management approach allows us to make sure that, although we recognise the fact that we're not getting enough funding, it gives confidence that we're still spending it effectively and in the right place at the right time, as effectively as possible, given that gap that we have.
I'm sorry for it.
Yeah. It also helps us deliver best value, and it perhaps sounds a little bit contradictory given the figures that we've looked at, but we do benchmarking with other local authorities to, just to confirm to ourselves that we're delivering value for money. We're increasing the use of the in-house workforce where possible as well, because we've demonstrated that is cheaper than bringing contractors in, and that goes back to when we brought the service back in-house back in 2010. And we are regularly reviewing our processes and performance just to make sure we really are sweating the assets and spending that money as effectively and efficiently as possible. So the asset management approach, I have to stop calling it the new code of practice. We've had it since 2016. So the current code of practice recommends adopting a risk-based approach to how we manage the footways and carriageways, all highway assets. The old code of practice was much more prescriptive, but this risk-based approach allows us to meet the requirements as far as possible with our available budget. It also helps us to react to increases and decreases in budget, for example. We've got the additional 9 million a couple of years back. It wasn't we weren't in a panic as to how we're going to spend this additional funding. We knew straight away where we would be able to best direct it. And just as a little add-on to that, and again, probably telling you something you already know here, but the DFT, Department of Transport, require us to fill in a self-assessment questionnaire every year. And if we don't hit a certain banding in that, then our funding starts to get so there are consequences to not adopting the recommendations in the code of practice there. So how we went about it, we got all the condition data, started to analyse how the network performs, how it deteriorates. And then we developed our maintenance hierarchies, and these take into account not just the classification of the road, whether it's an A, B, C or unclassified road, but it takes into account the local environment as well. So whether there are schools on there, whether there are shopping areas, medical facilities, things like that. And these, we've got 26 maintenance hierarchies. H1 is strategic national importance, so roads such as the A52, right the way through to 26, which is public rights of way. The Code of Practice also recommends developing a resilient network, which, although it doesn't show brilliantly on the slides, the red parts of the highway network are our resilient network. And these are key routes that require high levels of attention. And for example, roads with emergency service depots on there, hospitals, health centres, key shopping areas, so shops serving the essentials, places such as Rolls-Royce Nuclear, abnormal load routes as well. So that is our resilient network that we developed in conjunction with county emergency planning and those key stakeholders such as Rolls-Royce in there as well. So armed with this information, we're now in the best possible place to produce long-term programmes that can easily be revised according to available budget or other external influences. So I'll very quickly talk you through how programmes now get put together. As I say, much more transparent than historically it has been. So scheme identification and prioritisation. We can identify the candidate schemes from the engineer's inspection, prioritise according to condition plus location. This gives us a minimum of 3 to 5 years of a forward plan. We can adjust it annually because different bits of the network will deteriorate at different rates. Allows us to then prioritise scheme and based on whatever the funding level is for any given year. At that point, we start looking at potential conflicts and collaboration, and that may be internally. So if traffic and transport have got junction improvements, for example, that they've got planned, or drainage colleagues have got an area that needs significant drainage works, we can start to collaborate with our colleagues at that point, as well as with utility companies. We make them aware of our plans as far in advance as possible. And then that means we can confirm our in-year programme, which will monitor and revise as the year goes on. So in year, we'll look at the treatment strategies, whether we're going, how much we're going to spend on resurfacing, the planned maintenance, how much we're going to spend on preventative treatments to extend the life of the asset. In-year programme management is reported through to infrastructure board and monitored in there alongside all the other assets in the highways and transport programme. Covers budgetary control, and we can respond to under and overspends in year as well. We then collate the as-built info, helps to maintain our condition data, and then feed that life cycle analysis, so we know what we've done and when we've done it, and then can monitor the performance of that treatment as well, and adjust those in future years if needs be. So outputs and outcomes, we've increased productivity from 13,000 square metres up to about 60,000 square metres a year. This does go back to when we first bought the service back in-house. And I'm not sure why the next two bullet points haven't come down. I'll get these added, and then Lindsay, for when it's published, they'll be complete on there. But the next bullet point down related to the fact that we're doing less reactive works, we're doing more proactive works. We recognise there's always going to be a need for reactive works. We're going to need to respond to things as and when they happen, but we've managed to reduce that quite significantly. And the other outcome that we're kind of quite proud of within the team is that the Department for Transport have often referred to Derby as an exemplar authority when it comes to asset management practices with the footways and carriageways. And other local authorities are often in touch with us to seek our advice, our opinion, how we overcame certain hurdles as we went through our asset management journey. So the next steps are we'd like to bring, or we're striving to bring, all highway assets to a similar level. So this is structures, drainage and public transport. And I think it's fair to say in the last year we've made significant developments there. We're looking to continue to develop and improve our asset management approach. We're always refining it, as we build this bigger picture of how the network performs. And then develop a better understanding of our carbon impacts. I mentioned the Department for Transport self-assessment questionnaire earlier on. Last year, they introduced some questions that specifically relate to decarbonisation and biodiversity as well. And I'll come on to that on the next slide, actually. So our current position with decarbonisation is, at the moment, we're establishing a baseline what our emissions are. There are government toolkits available, but we think they may be overestimating our performance in that. So with a group called the Future Highways Research Group, which is based out of Cranfield University, it's a number of local authorities working together to develop the toolkit so we can get much more accurate data on carbon outputs from our activities. From that, we'd like to establish targets and indicators for the council's overall climate change action plan and develop a better understanding of our carbon impacts from the, you know, the operations that we carry out. The aspirations with that are to obtain carbon data on a scheme by scheme basis or activity basis and understand the carbon intensity of our activities, develop a decarbonisation plan for highway maintenance and review this annually to identify trends and review targets, and then develop policies that actively encourages and supports the meeting of these targets. I think it's, you know, fair to say that we've had a slow start with this, because the focus has historically been on get as much resurfaced and repaired as possible. So this is very new. We're working towards it now with a number of other local authorities. So just a very quick summary. Basically, we're continuing to manage a declining asset, but now have the tools and processes in place to ensure that available budget is spent effectively. That total figure maintenance backlog for footways and carriageways, 75 and a bit million, with a 9 million annual need versus current annual budget of around about 4 million. The team can now be much more responsive to changes in budget, and work is in progress to cover all the highway assets, not just carriageways and footways. On a positive note, the team were awarded the APSI, the Highways Team of the Year in 2021. And as just covered in the last couple of slides, we've got ongoing work to better deal with decarbonisation. So hopefully that's given you a good overview. Thanks for taking the time out to listen, and guess it's time for questions.
I'll start then. Can I just go back to the slide where it was your budget? Was it 4.3 million your budget needed to? I think
that one, yeah.
4.48, sorry.
Yeah.
So you've got a budget of 4.48.
Yeah.
But you actually need to spend 51.6 million on the roads.
On the roads, yeah.
And another 23.6 million
on footways.
Footways.
Yeah, and that will get them up to an acceptable.
And that will get them not we're not talking beautiful, we're talking acceptable.
Yes, yeah.
Just off the top of your head, you know, how much to get them to a good standard? Would it be double that?
I'd probably not go as far as double. 75, I'd say probably 50% on top, so maybe, and that is ballpark top of my head.
So when you imagine a declining asset.
Yes, yeah.
And the roads are getting worse.
The roads are getting worse, yes, yeah.
Okay, and the budget that you've got is not going to make a dent in it, really, is it? Well, okay. No.
It makes improvements in that immediate area where we're spending it, but no, in terms of it's.
So how long before some roads become unusable? So that's got to happen.
That's something I'd have to go away and run through the process to find out. Yeah.
We're not declining assets. One day we're going to decline too far.
Yes, yeah.
And a road will have to be closed.
And I can't remember the authorities where it's happened, but some authorities have actually closed roads.
I want to say, I've heard about this in the past. I want to say it was done. So the next one is, so when you tar and feather it, which is that chippings and tar.
Surface dressing, yeah.
How long does that extend the life of the asset for?
It depends on the road and the usage, but on average, would like to say if you look at if we're building a road from new today, it will have a design life of about 25 to 30 years. So the interventions will be year 7 surface stress, year 14 surface stress, year 21 do a thin surface, year 25 complete resurface.
So when you do complete resurface, is that hard on it as well?
That takes the top 2 layers of tarmac. It's not the sub base underneath.
Right. So when we make new roads or we resurface new roads, I've read there's some idea now about the hardcore they put down. They actually coat it in recycled plastic first, and then when they lay that down and they're finding that surface then is lasting a lot longer.
Yeah.
What new technologies have we got?
We're starting part of the climate change initiative. We're starting to use warm mix asphalts, which are long lasting but less of a carbon impact. all our resurfacing schemes go through colleagues in engineering design who will look at if we've got a budget for resurfacing a particular road, they will look at options to actually maximise the life of that. So it may be that sometimes we can put a geo grid in, which I think is what you're referring to, which can extend the life of it. There are some authorities that put recycled plastic into the tarmac as a replacement for a certain amount of aggregate, but it's not a huge amount of plastic that goes in there. And early indications are that it doesn't extend the life significantly. It's more about reducing the amount of virgin material that goes in there in the first place.
I think it's fair to say that a lot of it, these are national issues.
Yes, yeah,
and,
yeah.
and a lot of it is new technology.
It is,
where we haven't got, the things we use now have got years and years of testing and research on them that they're a proven product. But the new things like warm mixed asphalt are still really in their infancy and still being tested to see. They haven't been down for 30 years to give us the indication of how long they will last or what difference they make. So, but we're testing that nationally. So being involved in the research group is really important, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Thank you very much. Chris?
If you got the £60 million you need to bring it up to a standard, how many weeks would it take you to bring it standard?
Days, I thought.
The point is, Dave, obviously you can have all the money in the world, but you can't close the city.
No.
You can't do all the works like yesterday. We put £9 million in over 2 years.
Yeah.
And I've certainly noticed the difference.
Yes.
In terms of the runs of roads that have been properly resurfaced. Did we ever have, is that all spent?
That's all spent, yeah.
And have we ever come out with the map or gave the outcomes from that 9 million?
I can get a map. If I get you a map after the meeting later on, I'm happy to send that through later on. Am I okay to leave the Teams meeting? Yes, yeah, thank you. But in terms of the impact it had, just bear with me 1 sec. I only got this information through at the back end of last week. While this is loading up, did you have any other questions, Chris, while this is loading up?
The amount of money you've had to spend this year and last year, does that take into account the winter maintenance grant? I don't know if I ever heard the amount of the last year's.
That is in there. I think that there's the pothole funding. Is that the one you're referring to? Yeah, the pothole funding the last couple of years has been about 1.6 million, and that is included in that 4.4 million.
I never really heard that figure. You put it towards general fund or?
So it went to the proactive type works rather than the reactive type works. I think it's called pothole funding, but the accompanying guidance for how and where it should be spent is not just filling potholes but preventing them from forming in the first place. So we put it towards what we call pothole hotspots and doing some longer term, more proactive works.
I think the point I'm making, David, is that whilst we acknowledge, we've always acknowledged the backlog in the funding available, bring it up to scratch. The answer is not to find 60 million, it's to find more each year, a bit more each year to help maintain and catch up on the programme, isn't it? Over a period of time, I'm a serious question, how many years do you think it would take to get it back to scratch?
If we've got 60 million now, I would say 5 years, 5 to 6 years to spend that.
If you put 10 million in here, or another 9 million, 5 years should be getting somewhere.
Be getting somewhere, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
You should suggest that.
You're touching on a very good subject there, aren't you, really? Because you haven't got enough money in your budget to do any improvements at all, have you?
Right, well, you're firefighting.
You're firefighting, exactly, it's declining.
Yeah.
So I suppose the question is, how much money do you need each year to maintain them as roads as the standard as they are now and make improvements each year?
So what we would need would be over 5 years, we'll need initially an extra 10 million over 5 years, plus another 5 million, so 15 million. This is just for roads we're talking.
Yeah, let's just go.
Yeah.
Obviously, payments will come on to
Yeah.
it. So you would need an annual budget of about £15 million a year.
For 5 years, and then that would drop off to 10 million every year ongoing.
It's a lot of money, that is, isn't it?
Yeah, to increase costs. Of course.
Yes.
Yeah. 15 million.
That's not
Yeah.
including inflation.
No.
Matthew.
Sorry, can I just go back to the bit of information I've got? So, before we got the 9 million, when we did the annual inspection, 3.8% of the highway network was classed as new, so in tip-top condition. This year's survey, we're up to 6%, so that shows what that 9 million did achieve.
Could that be, forgive me, I'm
Yeah.
playing devil's advocate,
Yeah.
could that be because we've taken on some new housing estates? So the new roads that those housing estates are built have gone into that percentage?
That will be in that percentage, but not to the tune of 2.2%. It's going to be part of that initial that 2.2%, but it's not going to be a huge part of it compared to the overall length of the network. Yeah, okay. So Councillor Holmes.
I think it was clear that every area has seen improvements made, part of the extra £9 million funding. So even it wasn't a small amount of money, but it's less obviously than we're talking about in terms of the overall scheme of things. But I think that gives us a ballpark realistically of any administration of this council would need to be looking at least £9 million over 2 years to make inroads, excuse the pun, visible improvements that residents can see. I think that's really important. I mean, I've seen it in my ward, everybody else has as well, some significant improvements. And so that's the, I think that's the marker down. It's around 10 million over 2 years.
Yeah.
It was nearly £500,000, the government's budget pothole funding for Derby. And that was included in Chris said.
Yes,
in that, so it's hard to share. But just a few points. So we're talking about the surveys, and forgive me if this is the case, but I can't remember seeing this. Transparency in regards to those surveys, is it something that could be discussed, for example, at neighbourhood level, say the committee meetings with the councillors, when we're talking about local transport priority briefings or just general discussions? It might be worthwhile at least having a ward by ward sort of insight into the survey, the state of the surveys of the road, roads and pavements, what officers look at, their spreadsheet, whatever.
Yeah.
And it leads me on to the fact that we always get residents in all of our wards saying this pavement's the worst one in the ward, quite possibly is, but there's lots that are really bad. And would it be something that to allow more transparency for the longer term work programme, a list effectively, so going from the survey to what officers work on in the list, there be some more transparency with that, so that at least there's some document somewhere on CMIS that could be referred to as a longer term, this is how your roads and pavements have been rated. Because for us, it's very difficult to explain to residents the mystery of how officers do this. We say that's really bad, and officers say, well, it looks really bad, but technically it's not as bad as that one, and it might be worthwhile. I don't know, it's an idea. And then when it comes to the cabinet, obviously we get the work programme confirmed, and that's when we have a public document that tells us in each ward, it's got the whole list, it's all transparent, we know what we're doing. Yeah. But I'm just wondering whether the steps leading to that there might be some value in making it a little bit more transparent to help councillors and residents understand where the land lies in their ward.
We've never been asked for it. I really don't see an issue with providing it. It helps, as you say, give that transparency and give that confidence to people that they can see the process we go through and why their street might be graded as this and the neighbour's street. I don't see a problem with sharing that.
Because it is something that genuinely officers deal with.
Yes.
We as councillors can't choose, quite rightly, but we do, like any other member of the public, we'll say we believe this road or this pavement needs intervention or is really bad, where does it sit? So I think there's that one.
But then, sorry, just to go back, like you say, councillors don't get involved. We do.
You don't choose.
No, but where there's a particular case up in Mickleover at the moment, actually, where there's a resident who has got disabilities, and that has come through council as well. So yeah, okay, we can take that into consideration and perhaps, you know, bump that up, not bump it up, that's the wrong terminology, but, you know, adjust the prioritisation. Yes,
I get that. Yeah. So yeah, just to clarify, it doesn't mean that we don't.
Yeah.
Or it's just that the perception sometimes is councillors can choose which and we can't. Finally, decarbonisation. So I get that, clean and green and everything else. But for me personally, I don't think it should hinder the work programme or dilute it. It's a very tight budget. Obviously, we've just discussed how much we need compared to what we've got.
Yes.
I think that it's very important to decarbonise but it shouldn't then result in less being done with the money that we have. That's my worry with that. It needs to be very carefully approached.
And just to kind of echo your comments there, you see this in many areas where a new product will come in and it's more environmentally friendly than its traditional, the thing that it's trying to replace, but that comes at a cost. And we've often spoken about this, haven't we, Werner, about which are we going to go for? So it's, comments noted, and it's not something that we, you know, haven't had internal discussions about.
Yeah. There are some things the council can do which are absolutely justified and probably are maybe even save money. But I think this one, there's going to have to be a balance here to our commitments to climate change, decarbonisation, compared to the reality the residents expect. As many pavements and as many roads to be improved. I don't think they would have any truck with us virtue signalling potentially on a green pavement, but we can only do one, whereas with the other alternative we can do 10. Now that's where I, just caution really. We'd like to learn a little bit more about what all that means really in terms of the programme.
As I said, sorry.
No, I guess that the only thing to balance with that, and I agree that we'll have difficult decisions to make, is going back to Dave's comment about that banding and the DFT code of practice. So actually they are strengthening that through decarbonisation figures, and if we don't meet the standards that they want, then we won't get.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to give us some.
So there's going to be
green. They're going to have to give us some more money to make it happen.
It's going to be tricky. We'll have to navigate it.
Councillor Nowaz.
Yeah, mine's just a comment. You've talked about the money bit and everything. Who decides when you're working on the roads what time to start, what time to finish? Is that yourselves or?
If it's not a traffic sensitive road, then it's within highways normal working hours, and the team start at 7:45 and finish at 3:30. So by the time they've got kind of loaded up and out on site and what have you, it's usually about 8:30 before they start. If the road is traffic sensitive, then we speak to our colleagues in network management to see if we need to do weekend work on there, if it's restricted hours to avoid peak traffic, or even if it's nighttime working.
Recently, I've just seen too that at the hospital, Royal Hospital outside there, it's been chaos, and that would have been really good at night time, right?
Where sure it would have been for the local residents.
At Asda, they done it, roundabout in Scotland. That residents didn't say nothing there. They're working nights there.
So you're on about where BNM Island is. You're on about,
yeah.
Is there any residents? There's not any residents that actually live really close.
Just to Derby Road, there are, isn't there? Or they moved to
Derby Road. I'm right in saying not that. You'll know better than anybody, Chris.
Yeah.
On the little bit of Nottingham Road.
Yeah, on a bit of
Nottingham Road.
They did do the slip road for Asda, so those on the right hand side of Derby Road probably got a bit of noise in the night, but
not as bad as about. I'm just thinking about that bit of road. Yeah, they've done that. I can understand why they're not working on, because there's a lot of people that live on that road.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, it's more than that. Yeah. But in the daytime, it's a lot.
I'm not saying it isn't. I mean, trust me, I was there the other day, mate. It's not much fun, is it? But on the opposite side of that road was horrendous and really didn't need.
No, it didn't need doing it. Definitely
really did, because Sina and I were coming along there, and thinking to ourselves, you know, if you're in the back of an ambulance on this road,
Yeah.
you know, in a bit of a bad state, you would not want to be on that road. It's feeling even worse. So
I've just driven on a chair. It's fantastic. They've done a great job.
Yeah.
It's almost complete now. So I think they're ahead of schedule.
well, that's really well done. Well done indeed. Have you done anything?
Yeah.
That's it. Councillor Poulter.
Just kind of come in with Matt's suggestion that some of the prioritisation of the roads being available to the boards, maybe the highest subgroup as we've got, because there is a perception that councillors can influence it, and we don't want to go back to a pre-2016 system whereby certain wards, either the council's wards, have got 27 roads done in any one year or anything like that. So it just gives reassurance that there's a proper prioritisation system for the repairs.
And I recall when we first took the asset management plan and strategy to cabinet, it got really strong cross-party support, because when you're fielding inquiries, complaints from constituents, you've got, well, this is what drives it. But absolutely agree, councillor. I don't think there's any reason why we can't be even more transparent and share that with neighbourhood boards.
Just got to have a neighbourhood board for this. Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. One, sort of thinking back to when I was on the council previously, there was some talk about the government devolving road fund tax to local authorities and taking on additional responsibilities for some of the trunk roads and so on. I don't know if that ever got anywhere or no.
There is some work that's ongoing as part of the combined authority. Certain powers in terms of the key route network across the 4 authorities will be, Verna, you step in and tell me if I'm wrong here, but some of those powers will be devolved to the mayor in terms of those key routes across all 4 authorities. But in terms of them.
And secondly, just to ask about PFI schemes. I don't know if there are any of those anywhere in the country. I know there was the famous example of Sheffield, and I don't want to suggest that because I mean, led them with their trees and so on. But ultimately, I think they entered into that agreement because the roads got into such a condition that they couldn't recover from them. So we obviously don't want to get in that position. But no, just the sort of yes, are there any characters in the country that are? Is it even available still?
I don't think there's anything available anymore. There are still obviously cities such as Sheffield, Birmingham that have got existing PFI arrangements. Isle of Wight as well. I've got existing ones in place, but no drive for new ones. So, not heard anything.
Question is there, would you want? They never really work over it, to be.
Didn't for Sheffield.
No.
Beauties of having this meeting streamed on YouTube, by the way. Colleagues just pointed out that going back to the hospital, it was to keep residents happy up there that we didn't work at night. So
yeah,
to confirm that,
that's exactly right. I know it was chaos during the day. I had to go there to go and see my father-in-law in his home, and it was absolutely horrendous. However, decent residents can sleep at night, and there's a beautiful road outside.
Yeah.
You know, so wouldn't like to go through that traffic. I think I've been up all night because of that as well. You know, so I get that and I do understand it. Right, okay. I don't know if we want to make any type of recommendations here to the cabinet, because I'm really concerned that the budget that you've got is not improving the roads at all. It's actually they get into a state of decline, and one day roads will start failing. Do we want to put a recommendation forward to cabinet that they look at this budget and actually put a budget together that improves the roads in Derby? And we can ask the cabinet member to go away and look at that for us. What's the appetite?
Chair, I would urge the current administration to look at putting more funding in the same way that the previous administration did. I don't know if that can be a recommendation.
It's for me because the outcomes are there, aren't we can prove that by putting a little bit of extra money in, it's made a difference, and you can extrapolate that to how long it would take to sort it out.
Yeah, I don't want to get in the situation, and I think we're in a position to do something positive, is to say, we can't sit here as a board and say, we're happy for the roads to be in decline.
No.
We can't say that as a board, can we? What we can say is to the cabinet member, our recommendation is that you increase your budget to a level where you are improving the roads each year. Would that be a fair thing to say?
And sorry.
I think we all know the condition of the council's finances. That's not going to be an easy thing to do. So I think it needs to be external funding, lobbying, whoever, for additional external funding to come in to be able to do that.
Well,
If we say funding, it covers.
It does cover, but I think the difficulty is going to be, you're going to go to central government, and are they going to give you, they're going to think, oh yeah, Derby, do we want to give them any extra funding? Or do we have to find it out of existing budgets? I just think that we've got to, I think you're right, let's word it as funding. So I think the recommendation is, we would recommend council cabinet member to increase the funding to actually improve the roads year on year, not decrease them.
It's not within the gift of the cabinet member to do that, though. It's through the budget setting process.
In which case, then the cabinet member for the cabinet. So the cabinet that's to do that. Then. It's the cabinet that set the budget, isn't it? So
it's full council.
Well, semantics. Okay. I mean, basically, the process that the previous administration followed to agree to put more money in was a political decision by the cabinet, and it went through the mechanism of council and was agreed by full council in the budget. So I think we know what we're talking, what we're asking for, Chris.
Yeah, that's Chris. It's about prioritising, isn't it? At the end of the day, what we should be asking to do, agree with the recommendation, but asking the cabinet to prioritise highways maintenance to the extent of making gradual improvement, as has been evident in what we've done previously. At the end of the day, we know that the cabinet member, also the leader of finance, said that the budget's going to be reviewed. And they're just doing things differently, prioritising different things, and we are suggesting that they ought to be prioritising highways maintenance.
I think it's fair to say that every single person in the city lives in the city and works in the city uses the public highway, whether that be the road or the pavement.
They can do it if they want to.
So it does affect everybody.
And Chair, can I just add on further consideration of the recommendation or not? But let's not forget that the climate change has I think it's probably £2.7 million in capital money still unspent. I don't know, Werner, is it around that?
It's a bit less than that.
A bit less. So let's say 2.5 million then. Is there any scope to potentially, if there is a requirement to look at green maintenance or a project, rather than it coming from the main maintenance fund, is there something that we can do via that capital fund to tick the box and to keep
one of the ways that the cabinet member responsible for finance can prioritise?
Because that's funding, if it is genuinely green infrastructure or delivered highways maintenance, footway maintenance based on some new green technology or a new way of working, specifically decarbonisation, for me, there's that part of money that could be drawn from, not from the main maintenance fund, potentially. I don't know, it's just something, you've got to look
Can we answer that question?
These are all capital pots of money that haven't been spent so far. So, I
think, Chair, I'd support the recommendation that said reviewed internal budgets and looking to maximise funding that's available alongside approaching central government for additional funds as well.
I don't think that's not sitting with me, Martin, because I think we should be recommending that they make improvements to the roads and pavements every year, and they need to set a budget that does that. That's where I am.
I agree. I mean, where the funding comes from is something the cabinet can
worry about,
decide themselves if they want to lobby and get it external or internal. At the end of the day, we're saying. So is the wording going to be something like we recommend that council cabinet
look at the funding for maintenance for highways and add enough money in there to make improvements year on year and not a decline. Yeah, we happy with that?
Perhaps prioritise rather than look at.
Yeah, prioritisers. Yeah, that's fine. Are we happy with that?
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed? Yeah, I agree. Yeah, okay. I was hoping we could talk about utility companies repairs. Have we got the right people in front of us to talk about that? We've had, and this happens in every board, and I'm sure that we all get very, very frustrated with utility companies repairs. At the moment, we've got BT Openreach in Chellaston. They should have gone Sunday. They were still there today. I appreciate they've now got a new licence, but it's still the same work that they're doing. And they are there 9:30 till about 3. My problem with it is they are there, they're only working in the footway, they're not working on the road, and they've still got traffic lights. I don't understand why they can't just use stop-go boards, because there's somebody there anyway. Stop-go boards, we'll all agree, are a lot quicker to use. Can we put something forward that says, if you are a utility repair company and you are only doing a utility repair in the footway, you do not use traffic management where possible, you would use stop-go boards. I appreciate that can't always happen because sometimes they need to do 3-way lights and you can't do a stop unless you can get a triangular stop-go board, but I don't think they exist. Then go on Dragon's Den with that one. Can we put something in that says, look, if you are doing this type of work, please you can't use traffic lights, you can only use stop-go boards. Is that something we could actually do?
We do, and again, it's not my area of expertise, it's colleagues in network management, but we do occasionally stipulate stop-go boards for that very reason, or manually controlled traffic lights where they've got somebody operating that is watching to see what's on either side. But we can have that conversation with colleagues in
have to find out a bit more and come back to you.
I really appreciate that, because it is in my ward there is a certain area just by the vets. And it's not the gas board, it's the electric board. If it's not the electric board, it's the telephone. If it's not them, it's the water board. And I understand why, because it's where all the main junctions are. So I understand that, but my residents are very upset about it. And I'm sure it's the same in Spondon, Normanton, Arboretum. Don't ask me where you are nowadays, Martin. I couldn't tell you what they're called. So I do get that. I think it was Matthew.
Yeah. Are we still on item 6?
Yeah. Well, we're just.
I was going to raise that actually in item 7, because I would like that whole permit system, the roadworks review, in terms of on a harder line, more scrutiny on the utility companies and contractors in the city, because if that's something I can.
Well, shall we move on to item 7? So thank you very much indeed for that. We'll move on to item 7.
Chair, yeah. So one of the topic reviews that I would like to put forward is that.
Yeah.
So a review and a bit of scrutiny from this board on the whole permit system, understanding it, how officers are approached, how it's agreed, what the timeframes are agreed, how they're agreed, what kind of work, all of that, understand that better. And then we can maybe throw back some of the issues that we have at a ward level, such as the works may finish in the 3-day period of the permit, but then there's 3 days of 3-way traffic lights where nobody's collected them.
Yeah,
we can't touch them. Council don't want to touch them, and yet residents being inconvenienced with no work and the work's been completed, for example. Doesn't always happen, but has happened many times in my ward of Mickleham. So it's something that I would like to look at, because I'd like to understand, what triggers a fine if they overrun, what constitutes overrunning, the whole process really. So I'd like to put that forward as a topic review. I think it'd be quite useful, and see if we can contribute to maybe something, to see some improvements made really in terms of keeping the contractors. They've got a very difficult job, I get that, but the utilities and their contractors putting a little bit more pressure on them to be a little more considerate of the work that they do.
Yeah, I remember there was one on Victory Road a few years ago now, and whenever the job was, something across the road, it was there for a fortnight. And after the work was complete, I'm sure I know eventually they did get a fine, but we need to have a bit more teeth or a bit more. So that's exactly the one I want to do, because it's a hot topic for my ward. I almost said our ward then, but that's going back some years, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's a big one for me. Chris, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you, Dave knows, I could give you a dozen recent incidents of misuse of permit system, particularly declaring emergencies.
Yeah, I know.
They've had it planned for weeks.
Yeah.
So they've got somebody spare on a Sunday and they're dropping an emergency permit in or something. And yeah, I can give you loads of examples. And Brendan does a fantastic job of trying to manage the management of it, but he is so busy and it's a resource thing. And it might be that we could seriously look at the possibility of employing somebody to do this job, to do the enforcement, because I think they'd pay for themselves within weeks.
I think you're absolutely right.
In terms of the numbers of the amount of enforcement.
Win-win.
And if they don't pay for themselves, then the utility companies are going to have to keep paying. But I think if you tighten up on them, their abuse of the system reduce significantly.
I absolutely agree with that. You know, you used to see, I've spoken to the workmen and, you know, when they're clearing stuff, when they go, half the time they don't ring us to tell us they've finished the job. They think it's funny.
Yeah, it's left handwriting, isn't it? I mean, Woodcroft and the traffic lights at Woodcroft, there's so much works there recently, and every time we have 3 or 4 way lights on there, and then we can't they finish the work, we can't put the lights back on because nobody's told the lighting team that the traffic lights can be changed back to normal. Yeah, so it's not just an isolated problem, it's across the city.
It is across the city.
And I think at least 1, maybe 2 people employed to do some positive effect.
Yeah.
And I think there'll be evidence there to prove that.
I agree entirely. Did you want to say anything, Martin? Sorry, Martin.
Yeah, I was just wanting to make another suggestion of topic reviews. So we've got the assemble, haven't we? We've agreed that earlier on. Suggestion I'd like to make would be to have a bit look at Derby Connect in a bit more detail. Obviously the pandemic and the changes to working at home and the whole working pattern really has changed so much. It'd be interesting to get a bit of feedback from them about how that's impacting them and how that's going to affect their service going forward into the future.
To do that, everybody else?
Sorry, on that one, Chair, business supports are heavily involved with Derby Connect, obviously, but we've made significant changes up at the IHUB. All the people that were in there are now out, taking up some of the vacant space within Derby Connect. So they do a pretty good job on trying to use the space that we've got for that. And the funding for business support is still coming in dribs and drabs from government and will be substantially increased under a combined authority.
I'm still happy to have a look at it. You know. It's all right. Okay. Nielsen, Matthew.
One more. I don't know. How many normally would we be considered to look at in the 23-24? I mean, what is the room for one more? Or what's your advice in terms of topic reviews?
I suppose you've
We've
got
got 3 now.
1 year.
Yeah, 1 a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll say it anyway, but I mean, we're going to have to, so how are we going to decide which, because we've got a huge project to Sombrel. We've got obviously permit schemes, roadworks. I mean, so are we suggesting to officers far too many than are realistically going to be looked at that year?
Now throw another one in.
Well, what was your focus?
My priority, my top one would be the property rationalisation. It's vital to the region and the city in terms of disposing of our assets, giving us the funding to be used going forward to support regeneration. And my experience of it so far, its progress has been extremely slow.
So
there's a lot of.
So if we're looking at just one.
Well, Chair, may I
yes,
put a
of
suggestion?
course you can.
I'm just thinking maybe it's discussion that we need to have. Vice Chair, maybe with consultation of the members here, just to see if we can maybe approach this in a in a way that we can maybe dip into some of these things somehow and have a main choice, but not discard the others.
See, I really want to do something on the utility repairs.
But we've got to look at the assembly. That's the major,
I appreciate
you
that.
know. I mean, if we don't, then who is going to? That's the thing.
Right, so we'll definitely do the assemblies because I agree with you. That really does need looking into. Is there any way we can also do something with the utility company repairs? We've got to. I really want to.
We could bring an overview of the permit system and have I mean, it's perhaps not a topic review.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
We'll come and have a discussion at the, so topic review, I would see that as something that's ongoing across the year, whereas we could come to
Would there
the
be a
next
chance
session
of
and-
bringing the utility repair companies with you?
All of them.
that would be,
Maybe just a few.
that might be unlikely, but we can ask.
Yeah, because I think it would be. I did attend a meeting with them all because they have. Because I did attend a meeting personally with them. Did you sort it out for me, Deb? I can't remember. But I did like a monthly meeting that they had, and I was lucky enough to address them. And then when they started giving me the answers, they thought I was the Secretary of State for Transport. Not. And also my Teams kept crashing. So it was really frustrating. It was the only time I've ever known Teams to crash, and it was doing it time after time. So I missed most of what was said.
Russians.
Possibly so, but I would really like, even if one or two could possibly come, so we could just say to them, look, we understand that things break. You know, we need to be careful. We do understand that you need to be getting your systems better. You need to have your different contractors that you use, you know, because it's always one contractor puts the traffic management in, someone comes and digs the hole, somebody comes and repairs it, somebody comes and fills the hole in, somebody comes and tarmac it, and then somebody eventually takes it away. That needs to be more streamlined, or at least consider better communication between them to make that time as minimalistic as possible. So that's what I'd really like, Matthew.
And then, well, I mean, leave it with us to find a way to do that, because I'm sure that during regular meetings we could probably get into some of these issues. The final one, again, it's something which I do feel needs a little bit. It's probably not a topic review, but I'll put it out there. 106 monies. I've spoken about this before.
Yeah.
It's specifically to do with the highway transport mitigation. So monies, pots of money for improvements or traffic crossings and that kind of. My ward, we've agreed with developers a significant amount of mitigation in the transport sphere, and we're still waiting for officers to give us the go ahead or tell us that they're in the work programme in terms of the pedestrian crossings that we've been waiting for already for a few years. One of the internal discussions is how that's going to impact on the medium-term financial plan in terms of a highways asset. You know, that's less of a concern for us as councillors. We just want it delivered. And I just am getting increasingly frustrated at how 106 elements, transport elements, seem to be being held up with internal discussion on, well, if we do bring that forward in this work programme, how's that going to impact on maintenance and future revenue and all of this kind of thing. For me, it's just going around in circles. So I don't know whether there's any scope on looking at the 106, not just my ward. I'm sure there's lots of other wards with 106 with regards to specific mitigation on transport measures. I just want a little bit of a more of a deep dive into that to understand, because at the moment it's very frustrating. We don't seem to be able to draw down on some of those pots of money to deliver those things. And I don't fully understand why, to be honest with you, and I'd like to know a little bit more about it.
I guess it's just how we manage all of the different things that you want to do with the town we've got in the depth we do. So perhaps we need to, as you say, if you're having a separate chair, vice chair, next time we have a pre-agenda, perhaps we'll take that away and we'll explore how.
I think we need to understand what scope
do
we've got
that.
per meeting to bring items, and then maybe some of the big ticket items to bring them as the work programme topic review done, I'm sure, but certainly a lot, Chair, to go on there.
Yeah. It's a helpful, Chair. I'll suggest maybe that the Connect Derby is a presentation at a forthcoming meeting rather than a topic review. I think it'd probably be.
Yeah, that's fine.
That might be the appropriate.
That's appropriate. We've got to the assembly. Okay. Anybody want anything else to say? Yes, Chris. No?
And the same can apply to the property rationalisation.
That's somebody on that would be great. Right, anybody else? Are we all good? All happy?
Yeah, with me.
Right, well, thank you very much indeed. I think that was a good meeting, actually one of the better ones I've been to in the past. Right, thank you very much indeed, everybody.
You chaired it, Chair.
Yeah.
Thanks.